Okay, fourth grade. I want to do a little quadrilateral. I have to do better than the name debrief. It's probably not a word you guys know. Let's call this the quadrilateral wrap up. After that activity we did yesterday with the quadrilaterals, just want to get a little bit clarified about quadrilaterals. So go ahead and write this down. And once you're all set, close your notebook, give me your full concentration. Alright, so things you have either learned from me this year or from your teachers in the past that I want to review real quick. So remember, polygons, those are closed figures with straight sides. And there are lots of kinds of those, right? Like if they have 3 of those closed straight sides, we call them triangles. If they have 4 of those closed straight sides, we call them quadrilaterals. If they have 5 of those closed straight sides, we call them pentagons. If they have 6 of them, we call them hexagons, and so forth. Those are all kinds of polygons. They all have straight sides, and they're all closed figures. And we've talked about lots of kinds of triangles, right? Like if we group them by their sides, they can either be equilateral, scalene, or isosceles. And if we group them by their angles, they can either be right, obtuse, or acute. And so today I want to do some similar things with quadrilaterals. I want to talk about the different types of quadrilaterals. There are a lot. This will be a review from 3rd grade. A little of it might be new. So that's where I wanted to start. So the first thing, the first way we classify or name quadrilaterals is by the number of parallel sides. If they have 2 sets of parallel sides, we call them parallelograms. Parallelograms. So they have 2 sets of parallel sides that are parallelograms. So the one you see the most often kind of looks like this, where the top is parallel to the bottom, and this side is parallel to this side. But anything where the sides are parallel works. So for instance, you don't usually call it one, but this is a parallelogram because it has 2 sets of parallel sides. This is parallel to this, and this is parallel to this. Another common one kind of looks like this. It's, I guess, kind of the same thing almost. That's a parallelogram because this is parallel to this, and this is parallel to this. And anything else, if it has 2 sets of parallel sides, there's another one, we call it a parallelogram. So all of these that I've drawn here are different kinds of parallelograms. They have 2 sets of parallel sides. If they have 1 set of parallel sides, we call them trapezoids. Some common ones, the most common trapezoid looks like this. We actually call that an isosceles trapezoid because if you were to extend it, it would make an isosceles triangle. But that's a trapezoid. There's also another kind of trapezoid you see a lot called a right trapezoid. It has like a right angle in it. They kind of look like this. And these are trapezoids because they have 1 set of parallel sides, but not 2. 1 set of parallel sides, but not 2. And some of them look even more, even like this is a trapezoid. Top and the bottom are parallel. 1 set of parallel sides is called a trapezoid. 2 sets is called a parallelogram. If it has no sets of parallel sides, it doesn't get a special name. It's just a quadrilateral. I can draw some quadrilateral that doesn't have any. These are always harder for me to draw. How about about 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a quadrilateral. No parallel sides anywhere. They don't get a special name. They're just called quadrilateral. So we name them by parallel sides. We either call them parallelograms or trapezoids or neither. Okay. All right, come on, next page. All right, right angles. We also sometimes name figures based on how many right angles they have. If they have 4 right angles, we call them rectangles. So this is a rectangle, and this is a rectangle, and even this is a rectangle, because all of these have 4 right angles. If it's got 4 right angles, it is a rectangle. And they don't have to be oriented flat. Even this is still a rectangle because it's still got 4 right angles. So that is another good word to know, is rectangle. Last but not least, congruent sides. We only have, much like angles, if it has 4 congruent sides, it has a name. We call it a rhombus. So a rhombus has 4 congruent sides. So all that means is all the sides are the same length. So they either usually look like this or like this. Those are both rhombuses, 4 congruent sides. I'll even put the marks. They also can look like this if all the sides are the same length. Kind of like that. As long as the sides are the same length, it's a rhombus. So 4 words to note: parallelogram, 2 sets of parallel sides; trapezoid, 1 set of parallel sides; rectangle, 4 right angles; or rhombus, 4 congruent sides. Okay, open your math notebook up and let's do that together. So I'm basically going to just write the same things down here for you. So when you look at parallel sides, it can either have 2 sets of parallel sides, 1 set of parallel sides, or no sets. And let's see, let's get our vocabulary word in there before we draw them. If it has 2 sets of parallel sides, we call it a parallelogram. So for instance, this, by the way, is the symbol for parallel. If you see these little arrows, that means that's parallel to that, and that's parallel to that if it's marked. That's a parallelogram. So is that. Anywhere you have 2 sets of parallel sides, you have a parallelogram. They don't have to be oriented that way. That's also a parallelogram because that and that are parallel, and that are parallel. Okay. 1 set of parallel sides makes a trapezoid. So they can look like this. 1 set parallel. They often look maybe like this. That side is parallel to that side. Sometimes they look quite irregular. That's okay too. Also a trapezoid, anywhere where 1 set of parallel sides. And if they have no sets of parallel sides, they get no special name. I don't know why not. They're just quadrilaterals. See, these are always hard for me to draw. There's one. No special name for that. There are no parallel sides, so it is not any of those things. Okay, so that's if you name them by their parallel sides. If you instead name them by right angles, they only really get a special name if they have 4 right angles. And that name is rectangle. And so they often look like this, 4 right angles, or like this, 4 right angles. They can look like this. They can look like this. But all those have 4 right angles, so all those are called rectangles. Now you'll notice these are all also parallelograms. If I go back and think of them by their sides, that's a parallelogram, that's a parallelogram, that's a parallelogram, that's a parallelogram. So these things all have 2 different names. They're rectangles and they're parallelograms. This, you probably already noticed, also has 2 more names you probably know that are coming up. So you might want to even put that like a little asterisk. These are also parallelograms. Just like a right triangle can also be a scalene triangle, a rectangle can also be a parallelogram. Just 2 different names. Depends on how I'm classifying it. And then congruent sides, 4 congruent sides. Those are called a rhombus. R-H-O-M-B-U-S. And a rhombus can look like this. As long as all the sides are the same length. I'm going to mark that they are just to show you because I probably didn't draw it quite right. And that's a rhombus. And that's a rhombus. And you'll notice, these are also parallelograms. This one also a rectangle. So this is a rectangle and a rhombus and a parallelogram and a quadrilateral, and you probably know another name for it called square. So all these have a lot of different names. So that's the gist of it. So those are just vocabulary words you need to know. We can classify quadrilaterals by how many congruent sides they have, how many parallel sides they have, or how many right angles they have. And that is it. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense to you, and we will do some practice in the you-dos tomorrow. See you then.